Hi and good afternoon. This is Clive on Live Pulse. And this afternoon, I want to talk about something that's important. Important to me, important to everybody. It's, it's about a reckoning. Now, let's just get straight into it. No warm up, no soft landing, because Heywood hasn't had a soft landing in decades, and I'm not about to give one now. Something is happening in this town. You can feel it in the air, thick, electric, unsettled. And as we head towards the May elections, that feeling isn't going away. It's getting sharper, heavier, more focused. You can see it, you can feel it. People are angry. People are tired. People are looking at the political system and saying, enough! Enough of the excuses. Enough of the goddamn promises. Enough of the same old faces telling the same old story. And if you think that's just noise, if you think that that is just background grumbling, then you haven't been listening. Because I have. Every day. On the phones. In emails. On the street. In the market. Outside takeaways. In the pubs. Taxi ranks. School gates. WhatsApp groups that light up at 2 a.m. because someone's had enough. You see, this isn't apathy. This isn't disengagement. This is a reckoning. And yes, let's not dance around it. Reform UK is part of that reckoning. Not because everyone suddenly agrees with every policy. Not because people have become political revolutionaries overnight. But because people in Heywood are looking at the political menu saying the usual isn't feeding us anymore. Now, let's be absolutely clear. I am not here to tell you who to vote for. That's not my job. My job is to tell you what is happening, to dig, to expose, to connect the dots, to shine a light where others prefer shadows. And what I'm seeing, what I am hearing, is a town that's been pushed too far for too long. Now, let's start with the basics. Heywood is a town that works hard. It always has. It always will. Heywood, well, we built things. We grafted. We kept the wheels turning long before the logistics corridor at Junction 19 became the shiny new buzzword for people who've never set foot here. But what did we get in return? A town centre that looks like it's been forgotten by time. Buses that vanish like ghosts. Kids with talent but no ladder to climb. A high street that's been left to fend for itself. And politicians from all sides who show up when the cameras are rolling and then disappear when the bins are overflowing. People here aren't stupid. They know when they've been taken for granted. And by God, they've been taken for granted for years. So, when I say the May elections are shaping up to be a reckoning, I'm not talking about party colours. I'm talking about dignity. I'm talking about respect. I'm talking about a town that's had enough of being a footnote in someone else's speech. That's why the political landscape is shifting. That's why Reform UK is suddenly in conversations where they weren't before. Not because they've magically solved everything, but because people are desperate for someone, anyone, to speak in a way that sounds like real life. You see, this isn't about ideology. This is about reality. And the reality is simple. Heywood feels ignored. Heywood feels abandoned. And Heywood feels like it's been left behind while everyone else moved on. And when a town feels like that, it doesn't whisper, it roars. So, as I said, we have to go forward, wait till the May elections, and then see what happens. You know, I mean, Heywood needs this. We need reform in Heywood. We need reform councils. I mean, by rights, we need reform to take over the council. But I don't see that happening this year. Now, and here's the thing. Heywood, when a town roars, it's not random. It's not sudden. And it's not some overnight tantrum. It's a result of years of pressure building up, drip by drip, failure by failure, promise by promise that never ever materialized. Let's break it down. Let's go forensic. Because if there's one thing I'm tired of, it's being told that, oh, things take time. By people who've had plenty of bloody time and delivered precisely nothing. Transport. That's the first crack in the system. Let's start with buses. Because if you want to understand how a town gets ignored, look at the transport. Try getting from Heywood to anywhere meaningful without a car. Try getting to Bury on a Sunday. Try getting to Rochdale after 7 p.m. Try relying on a timetable that might as well be written in disappearing ink. People in Heywood aren't asking for miracles. They're asking for a bus that turns up, a connection that exists, and a system that treats them like citizens, not bloody afterthoughts. And every election, we hear the same lines. We're investing. We're reviewing. We're improving. Where? Show me. Point to it. I've walked the routes. I've stood at the stops. I've watched people give up and walk home in the bloody rain. This isn't a transport system. It's a shrug with wheels. And of course, what do we get after transportation? Yeah, town centre. The slow motion collapse. Boy, have we seen it. Now let's talk about our town centre. Because if you want a symbol of political neglect, you don't need a report. You just need to walk down Market Street. Boarded up shops. Units that have been empty longer than some councillors have been in office. And a high street that looks like it's been left in a drawer and forgotten. And every time someone raises it, what do we hear? Oh, regeneration is coming. Plans are being developed. Oh, consultations are underway. Consultations? We've had more consultations than open shops. People don't want bloody consultations. They want action. action. They want leadership. They want someone to look at Heywood and see potential, not a problem. And that's why the political mood is shifting. That's why Reform UK is suddenly part of Heywood's conversation. Not because they waved a magic wand, but because people are sick of the same old script. Let's talk about youth opportunity, the silent crisis. Now, it's our young people we're talking about. Heywood's kids are bright, they're talented, they're ambitious, but they're boxed in. Where are the apprenticeships? Where are the training schemes? Where are the pathways that don't involve leaving town? We tell them to dream big, then give them nothing to climb on. We tell them they're the future and give them a present that's falling apart. And when young people feel trapped, the whole town feels it. Families feel it. Schools feel it. Communities feel it. This isn't just a policy failure, it's a moral one. And of course, then, on top of that, you get crime and antisocial behaviour, and that's the fear that creeps in. I mean, let's talk about safety. Because if you want to understand frustration, listen to people who don't feel safe walking home. You see, people want streets that belong to the families, not troublemakers. They want police who show up and actually do something. They want consequences, and they want bloody reassurance. But what do they get? Oh, well, resources are stretched, budgets are tight, and priorities are shifting. Well, here's a bloody priority. People in Heywood want to feel safe, full stop. And when they don't, they look for alternatives. They look for voices that say what they're thinking. They look for parties like Reform UK that tap into that frustration. Again, not because they're perfect, not because they're the answer to everything, but because they're speaking into a vacuum left by years and years of political silence. The other big one, NHS GPs access to. Now that is the breaking point. You try get a GP appointment. Bloody hell, try getting a dentist. Try getting anything without waiting weeks. You see, people aren't angry at the NHS. They're angry at the system around it. They're angry at the pressure. And they're angry at the excuses. And when people feel ignored, they don't stay quiet. They look for someone who acknowledges the problem, someone who doesn't pretend everything's fine. And that's why the political landscape is shifting. That's why Reform UK is gaining traction. Because people are tired of being told the system is under pressure when they're the ones feeling the weight. And as you can see, I mean, just recently, I mean, I tried to get a GP appointment. Oh, yeah, they said it's going to be 4 weeks. 4 weeks just to get an appointment to see your doctor. I mean, that is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's just, no. It just goes beyond the pale, it does. Now, We'll just dive straight back in again. So we'll do the political autopsy. Now, this is the part nobody in power ever wants me to talk about. The part they'll hope I'll forget. The part they bury under press releases, ribbon cuttings, and photos. Let's talk about the political record. Let's talk about all the promises. And let's talk about the trail of, "Oh, we'll get back to you," that never got back to anyone. Because if you want to understand why Heywood is heading into May with this level of frustration, this level of electricity, you have to look at the history. The cycle of promises. In every election, we hear the same lines. We're investing in the town centre. We're improving transport. We're tackling crime. We're supporting young people. Yes, we're protecting your greenbelt. And we're boosting local jobs. And every time people in here would say, "All right, let's see it. It's a load of bullshit." And every time, what do we get? Oh, a plan. A consultation. A strategy document. A glossy leaflet. And a photo of someone pointing at a map. Where's the delivery? Where's the follow-through? Where's the accountability? This isn't cynicism. This is pattern recognition. I mean, let's be honest. Heywood has been treated like a political afterthought for years. It's too small to be a priority. Too loyal to be a threat. Too quiet to be a problem. And that's the mistake. Because Heywood isn't quiet anymore. Heywood isn't patient anymore. Heywood isn't willing to sit at the back of the queue anymore. And that's why the political landscape is shifting. That's why Reform UK is suddenly part of the conversation. Not because they've reinvented politics, but because the old parties left a vacuum big enough to drive a logistics truck through. It's a broken regeneration story. Because if I had £1 for every time Heywood was promised regeneration, I could fund the bloody thing myself. We've had master plans. We've had vision documents. We've had consultations that went nowhere. We've had exciting proposals that quietly disappeared. Meanwhile, the town centre still looks like it's waiting for someone to remember it exists. And he's the forensic bit. When you track the timelines, when you compare the promises to the outcomes, when you look at the money allocated versus the money delivered, you see the same thing over and over again. Heywood gets the announcement, but Heywood doesn't get the result. And here is the truth. Nobody in the big parties wants to admit. They assumed Heywood would always vote the same way. They assumed loyalty. They assumed predictability. They assumed people would grumble but comply. But let me tell you, people aren't complying anymore. People aren't questioning. People are challenging. People are looking at alternatives, including Reform UK, because the old choices stopped earning trust. This isn't a political revolution. It's a political audit. And the numbers aren't stacking up. You've got the May elections coming up. Now, this is like a pressure valve because May isn't just a date on the calendar, it is a pressure valve, it's a release point. It's a moment when all the frustration, all the disappointment, all the broken promises get tallied up. People aren't just voting, they're reporting back. They're sending a message. They're saying, we've been watching, we've been listening, and we've been waiting, and now it's our turn. And that's why the rise of Reform UK matters. Not as an endorsement, not as a command, but as a signal. A signal that the old political assumptions don't hold anymore. A signal that Heywood is awake. A signal that the town is done being predictable. And it's true. Everything I've said there, it is true. I mean, when you think about it, what Heywood has had nothing from the council, nothing at all. All the money that was supposed to come into Heywood have gone to Rochdale. They get the money, we don't. Now, let's talk about the emotional core of a town on edge. So let's get into the part that the spreadsheets never capture. The part the manifestos never mention. The part the politicians never quite understand because they don't live it, breathe it, or feel it the way Heywood does. Let's talk about the emotional core of this town. Because politics isn't just policies. You can break it down to pride, frustration, identity, and the feeling you get when you walk down your own high street and think, this could be better. Hell, this should be better. Why isn't it? And that's the question that's been echoing through Heywood for years. Not whispered, not muttered, echoing. Now we'll get to Rochdale Council. The conversations behind closed doors. You know what's fascinating? The most honest political conversations don't happen in council chambers. They happen in kitchens, in break rooms, in the smoking area behind the pub, in the queue at the chippy, in the car on the school run, in the WhatsApp groups where people say what they really, really think. And what I'm hearing, what everyone is hearing, is a town that feels let down. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. People are saying things like, I don't recognize this place anymore. I said it. I'm tired of waiting for things to get better. I just want someone to tell the truth. And I'm sick of being ignored. I am not loyal to any party. I am loyal to my family. The last one hits hard because it tells you everything about where Heywood is right now. Now, let's have a look at the alternatives. The rise of Reform UK in Heywood isn't the cause of frustration. It's a symptom. You see, people aren't flocking to new political voices because everything is going well. They're doing it because the old voices stopped sounding like them. And when people feel ignored, they look for someone who acknowledges the problem. When people feel dismissed, they look for someone who listens. And when people feel abandoned, they look for someone who shows up. And that's why Reform UK is suddenly part of the political conversation here. Not because they've solved everything, not because they're universally loved, but because they're filling a space the old parties left empty. I mean, I can see the May elections as a mirror. And that brings us to something crucial. The May elections aren't just a vote. They are a mirror. A mirror held up to every broken promise, every missed opportunity. Every time Heywood was told soon and got never. People aren't just choosing candidates. They're expressing how they feel. They're saying, this is what you did. This is how it landed. And this is what it cost us. And that's powerful. That's emotional. That's political in the deepest sense of the word. For decades, politics in towns like Heywood ran on loyalty, generational loyalty, cultural loyalty, and habitual loyalty. But that's gone, evaporated, replaced by something sharper, tougher, more demanding. Accountability. People don't care about results anymore. They care about results. They care about honesty. And they care about someone, anyone, who will look them in the eye and say, yes, things are broken. Yes, we've been let down. And yes, we need change. And that's why the political mood is shifting. That's why Reform UK is part of the conversation, because people are done with loyalty. They're done with excuses. And they're done with being told to wait. What we have is a tipping point. A moment when frustration becomes clarity. When disappointment becomes determination. And when silence becomes a roar. Heywood is at that moment. You can feel it in the way people talk. You can feel it in the way people look at the ballot paper. And you can feel it in the way people say, this time it's different. And they're right. It is different. Because this time, the town isn't just reacting. It's responding, it's reflecting, and it's reckoning. So, we have to go from, how can I put this? We have to go from frustration to action. Now, here's the thing about Heywood. We don't move from frustration to action overnight. We don't flip a switch. We don't wake up one morning and suddenly decide, oh, right, that's it, we're done. No. It builds. It accumulates. It lays itself year after year after year until one day the weight becomes too much to ignore. And that's where we are now. That is what I sense. The shift you can feel in the air. You can sense it everywhere. In the tone of the conversations, in the way people talk about the May elections, in the way they talk about the old party, in the way they talked about alternatives, including Reform UK, not as fringe ideas, but as part of the mainstream conversation. This isn't a political fad. It's a political recalibration. People aren't saying, I want something new. They're saying, I want something that works. And that's a very different energy. For years, Heywood has been patient, too bloody patient. We've listened to promises. We've waited for regeneration. We've waited for transport improvements. We've waited for investment. And we've waited for goddamn leadership. And what did we get? A town centre that still looks abandoned. Bus routes that still don't connect. Youth opportunities that still don't exist. Crime concerns that still go unanswered. NHS access that feels like a flaming lottery. Patience isn't a virtue when it becomes a trap. And Heywood has realised that. The rise of political independence. Now, here's something the national parties haven't clocked yet. Because Heywood isn't loyal anymore. Heywood isn't predictable anymore. And Heywood isn't a guaranteed vote for anyone. People are thinking for themselves. People are weighing up options. People are looking at Reform UK, as well as Labour, Conservative, Independent, all of them, and asking, what have you done for us? What have you delivered for us? And what is it you've changed for us? Labour, apart from making this country a flaming cesspit. And that's the forensic shift. Not the rise of one party, not the fall of another, but the rise of independent thinking. Excuse me. You see, the political consequences of being ignored, now it's being felt. Because when a town feels ignored, it doesn't just get angry, it gets strategic. It starts asking questions like, who actually listens? Who actually shows up? Who actually understands what's happening here? And who actually talks about Heywood without reading from a bloody script? And that's why the political landscape is changing. That's why Reform UK is part of the conversation. Because people are no longer choosing based on tradition. They're choosing based on impact. Let's be clear. May isn't just another election, it is a turning point, it's a crossroads. It's a moment where Heywood gets to say, this is who we are now. This is what we expect. And this is what we will not tolerate anymore. People aren't just voting, they're expressing themselves. They're sending a message to every party, old and new. That era of complacency is over. And that's why this moment feels different. Because it is different. Heywood has woken up. For years, the political establishment assumed Heywood was asleep, that it would accept whatever was handed to it, that it would just stay quiet, that it would stay loyal. But Heywood isn't asleep. Heywood is wide awake. And when the town wakes up, the political consequences are seismic. This isn't a protest. This isn't a tantrum. And this isn't a phase. This is a town reclaiming its voice. And whether it's Reform UK gaining traction, or independents stepping forward, or long-standing parties being forced to confront their own failure, the message is the same. Heywood is done being ignored. Heywood is done being taken for granted. And Heywood is done waiting. And Heywood is a good town. And it will be even better after the May election. So, what is it that Heywood now demands? Well, here's the truth the political establishment keeps missing. You see, Heywood isn't just frustrated, and it's not just angry, and it isn't just fed up. Heywood is demanding something. And that demand is louder, clearer, and more uncompromising than anything we've heard in years. This isn't a light request. This isn't suggestion. And this isn't a when you get around to it. This town is saying, we've had enough. We want better, and we are not backing down. Here are our demands. Demand number one, we need honesty. You see, people in Heywood are done with spin, done with excuses, done with politicians who talk like they're reading from a script written 3 postcodes away. People want honesty, real honesty. The kind of honesty that says, yes, things are broken. Yes, we've failed you. Yes, we need to do better. And here is the forensic bit. When people don't hear honesty from the traditional parties, They start listening elsewhere. And that's why Reform UK is part of the conversation. Not because they're perfect, but because they're blunt. And bluntness in a town that's been ignored sounds a lot like honesty. Then we get demand number 2, presence. Heywood, well, it's tired of politicians who only appear when there's a camera, a ribbon, or a leaflet involved. People want presence. They want representatives who show up when the bins overflow, when the buses don't run, when the high street shutters another shop. They want someone who walks the streets, not just talks about them. Someone who knows the difference between the summit and the back of the mosque, because they've actually been there. And when they don't get that presence from the old parties, they start looking at alternatives. Reform UK. Because at least those alternatives are knocking on doors. And you'll get a local councillor that knows the area. Then we'll get demand number 3, delivery. This is the big one. The one that cuts through every political slogan. People want delivery. They don't want promises. They do not want plans. No more consultations. Delivery. Show us the bus routes that work. Show us the high street that's alive. Show us the youth opportunities that exist. Show us the police presence that reassures. And show us the NHS access that doesn't feel like a lottery. Heywood doesn't want to hear what's in development. Heywood wants to see what's being done. And when delivery doesn't come from the usual places, people start exploring new ones. And again, that's why Reform UK is part of the political mood. Because people are tired of waiting for results that never ever arrive. Now, the other one, which I put as demand number 4, is respect. This one is deeper than policy. I mean, this one is emotional, it's personal. Heywood wants respect. It wants respect for its history, for its people, for its graft, and respect for its identity. For too long, this town has been treated like a footnote, a safe seat, a predictable outcome, a place you visit for a photo and forget by lunchtime. But no, not anymore. Not this year. Not in this political climate. People are demanding respect, and they're prepared to withdraw it from anyone who doesn't earn it. Then we have number 5. I think this is important. Representation. This is the heart of the reckoning. You see, people want someone who speaks for them. Not at them, not around them, but for them. We need someone who understands the cost of living squeeze, not because they read a briefing, because they've lived it. Someone who knows what it feels like to wait for a bus that never comes. Someone who knows what it means when the high street loses another shop. And someone who knows Heywood, not as a dot on the map, but as a community. And again, that's why the political landscape is shifting. Reform UK is part of all this. Because Reform UK are putting local councillors in. People are searching, actively searching, for representation that feels real. And Reform UK will give them that. Now, after all the years that Heywood's been going, finally, Heywood's expectations have changed. And this is the part the old parties haven't grasped yet. Heywood's expectations aren't what they used to be. They're higher, sharper, and less forgiving. People aren't looking for slogans. They're looking for substance. They're looking for someone who understands the town's problems and actually intends to do something about them. And that's why May feels different. Because this time, the town isn't just voting. It's evaluating, it's judging, and it's holding every party, including Reform, to a higher standard. This isn't a political shift, it's a cultural one, a psychological one, and a community one. Heywood has raised the bar. And anyone who wants to represent this town, anyone has to meet it. So, let's say the reckoning arrives. And the way I wrote this, this is the moment everything has been building towards. The point where frustration becomes clarity, where disappointment becomes resolve, where a town that's been ignored for too long finally steps into its own power. Because that's what this is. Heywood. Power. Not the kind that sits in Westminster, not the kind that hides behind press releases, and not the kind that turns up once a year for a photo op. I'm talking about something far more important. Community power. The power of a town that knows its own worth. The power of people who've had enough of being talked at instead of listened to. And the power of residents who've realised the only way things change is when they demand it. And I'll tell you something else. The political establishment didn't see this coming. I mean, let's be honest. The big parties didn't expect this. They didn't expect Heywood to wake up, especially Labour. They didn't expect Heywood to question them. And they didn't expect Heywood to look at alternatives like Reform UK and say, hey, why not? What have we got to lose? For years, they assumed the town was predictable, that it would stay in lane, that it would keep voting the way it always had, and that it would accept whatever was handed to it. But let me tell you something. That era is over. And the political establishment is rattled. You can hear it in their tone. You can see it in their sudden urgency. And you can feel it in the way they're scrambling to explain themselves. Because nothing scares a complacent system more than a community that stops being compliant. The reckoning isn't about parties. It's about performance. Here's the forensic truth. This reckoning isn't about left or right. It isn't about red or blue. It isn't even about Reform UK versus the old parties. It's about performance, delivery, results. The party that can do that is the party that will win. People in Heywood are looking at every party, every single one, and asking, what have you done for us? What have you delivered? What have you changed? What have you fixed? And the answer keeps coming back, not much. Then the reckoning is deserved. And when we talk about the reckoning, it's also about memory. Because Heywood remembers. It remembers the regeneration plans that never ever happened. It remembers the transport promises that evaporated. It remembers the youth schemes that never ever materialised. It remembers the crime concerns that were just brushed aside. And it remembers the NHS pressures that were explained away. And when a town remembers, it doesn't forgive easily. It doesn't forget. It doesn't fall for the same lines twice. The rise of Reform UK is a political signal. The rise in Heywood isn't random. I don't think it's accidental, and it isn't fluke. To me, it's a message. It's a warning shot. A sign that the old political assumptions don't hold anymore. People aren't turning to Reform UK because everything is fine. They're turning to them because everything isn't fine. Because the old parties left a gap. The old parties stopped listening. And the old parties forgot the loyalty of this country. Reform UK didn't create the frustration. They stepped into it. The other thing, of course, is about standards. Now, this is the part that matters most to me. Heywood has raised its standards. It's raised its expectations. And it's raised its demands. And that's the reckoning. Not a party, not a candidate, not a slogan. A standard. A standard that says, do not tell us what you do, show us what you've done. Don't tell us you care, prove it. And don't tell us to trust you, earn it. And that standard applies to everyone. Labour, Conservative, Reform, Independent. Anyone who wants to represent this town, that standard applies. And also, this reckoning is also a reset. Because this May isn't just a vote, it's a recalibration. It's a moment where Heywood gets to redefine what it expects from politics. Not blind loyalty, not empty promises, and not party lines. But accountability, delivery, respect, and representation. And that's why this moment feels so charged, so alive, so different. Because Heywood isn't waiting anymore. Heywood isn't hoping anymore. And Heywood isn't asking anymore. Heywood is telling. Telling the political establishment, we are awake. We are watching. And we are not going back to sleep. And so here we are. This is the point where everything we've talked about, the frustration, the history, the failures, the shifting mood, the rise of alternatives like reform, the demands, the expectations. All of it converges into one simple truth. Heywood is not the same town it was 5 years ago. And it will not be the same town 5 years from now. And because something has changed, something fundamental, something irreversible. A town that once felt ignored now feels aware. A town that once felt powerless now feels aware. And a town that once accepted excuses now demands answers. And that's the reckoning. And this isn't anger, it's clarity. People sometimes mistake what's happening here for anger. They think Heywood is lashing out. They think Heywood is being difficult. They think Heywood is being unpredictable. They're wrong. This isn't anger. This is clarity. Clarity about what's being delivered and what hasn't. Clarity about who's showing up and who hasn't. And clarity about what matters and what doesn't. Clarity that the old political habits don't work anymore. Clarity that loyalty without delivery is over. And clarity that every party, Labour, Conservative, Reform, Independent, are being judged on performance, not branding. This town is reclaiming its voice. And that's the part that should make every political strategist sit up straight and listen. Because Heywood isn't drifting. Heywood isn't confused. Heywood isn't lost. Heywood is asserting itself. It's saying, we know what we want. We know what we deserve. And we are not settling for less. That's not chaos. That's maturity. That's political adulthood. That's a community stepping into its own power. The rise of Reform UK as part of a new political vocabulary. Let's talk about reform one last time. Not as a command, not as a persuasion, but as a fact of the political landscape. You see, their rise in Heywood is part of the story. Not the whole story, but a significant chapter. It tells us that people are exploring. People are questioning. And it tells us that people are no longer willing to accept the same old answers. Reform UK didn't create the frustration. They're responding to it. They're tapping into it. They're part of the new vocabulary of political expression in this town. And whether they rise further or fall back, their presence has already changed the conversation. You see, that now brings us to May. May isn't the end of anything. It's the beginning. It's the moment Heywood sends a message, not just to one party, not just to one candidate, but to the entire political system. We are awake, we are watching, and we expect better. Whatever happens in May, one thing is certain. Old assumptions are gone. Old loyalties are gone. And all complacency is gone. Heywood has raised the bar. And that bar is not coming back down. Because this isn't just about elections. This isn't just about parties. And this isn't just about reform, or Labour, or Conservative, or Independent. This is about identity. It's about pride. This is about a town refusing to be overlooked any longer. It's about parents who want better for their kids. Workers who want respect for their craft. Young people who want a future here, not somewhere else. And it's about residents who want a town centre that feels alive, not abandoned. And it's about communities that want safety, opportunity, dignity. This is bigger than politics. This is now personal. So, let me end. Just let me end with this footnote. Heywood, you are not a footnote. You are not a safe seat. And you are not a predictable outcome. And you are not a forgotten town. You are a community with a voice, a community with power, a community with expectation, a community with pride. And this may, whatever box you tick, whatever choice you make, the message is already loud and clear. Heywood is done being ignored, Heywood is done being taken for granted, and Heywood is done waiting. This is your reckoning. This is your moment, people. And this is your voice. And the country is finally going to have to listen. Thank you all very much. Goodbye.